This Week with Bob Mueller on News 2.
This week,
I'm Gloria Johnson, and I'm running for U.S. Senate.
Democratic State Representative Gloria Johnson announces her run for the U.S. Senate seat currently held by Republican Marsha Blackburn.
But now, as a director, I welcome that audit.
A new internal audit reveals Nashville is at a high risk of an increase of homeless encampments. More in our This Week cover story.
Our juvenile crime's running amok. I don't think they're going to tell you that juvenile crime's decreasing in Shelby County. I think it's increasing.
A push to toughen sentences for juvenile offenders failed to win support in the special session. It will be debated again next year.
And so it's commonplace for them to get messages asking to be somebody's sugar baby or a sexual solicitation.
A warning to parents from the TBI. Know what your children are doing online. Cyberbullying, solicitations, and threats are on the rise. And a conversation with Steve Cavendish, president and editor of the Nashville Banner, about next week's Nashville mayoral race between Alice Rowley and Freddie O'Connell. Hello again, and welcome to another edition of This Week. A Democratic challenger enters the race for the U.S. Senate seat held currently by Republican Marsha Blackburn. A warning from the TBI about what your kids have access to on the internet. Nashville now at an increased risk of a growing number of homeless encampments. More in our This Week cover story. A look at next week's Nashville mayoral election with Steve Cavendish of the Nashville Banner. And we begin with legislation to increase penalties for juvenile offenders. It failed to win support in the special session, but will be reintroduced next year.
When special session kicked off a few weeks ago, many expected the General Assembly to pass Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton's juvenile crime bills to force some juveniles to go to adult court and prison. Though, by and large, juvenile crime is actually down.
Well, it's decreasing on the number of people who are being arrested. What I will say, if you go down to Shelby County, like I was down there multiple times this year, you talk to any resident down there, juvenile crime's running amok. I don't think they're going to tell you that juvenile crime's decreasing in Shelby County. I think it's increasing. The number of carjackings, the number of violent crimes.
Sexton is correct that vehicle-related crimes like carjacking are increasing.
In Memphis and Shelby County, at least, there has been a spike in auto thefts by those under 18.
But as for those overall juvenile crime numbers, those have actually decreased significantly over the last decade.
The overall crime trend for juvenile crime has actually been down. Now, I know this Speaker Sexton has suggested that maybe that's just because there haven't been as many arrests because they haven't been able to solve as many crimes. But we actually took a look at that.
Shelby County District Attorney Steve Mulroy says the clearance rates, essentially the cases that have been reported that law enforcement solved and closed with an arrest, haven't dropped off.
And the clearance rates haven't really been on a steady downward decline during that period. So I don't think that's the explanation. I do think, in fact, there has been less juvenile crime.
Still, Sexton pushes on, saying it's an important piece moving forward.
Being able to have them be blended to where you can move them over to an adult population if they don't meet certain criteria, I think is the right step to go.
In Nashville, Chris O'Brien.
A warning to parents from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Know what your children are doing online. But with 1 in 5 teens online almost constantly, according to Pew Research, and apps always changing, is it possible to be everywhere all at once? News 2's Adam Mincer with the realities of what teens are seeing online.
She's gotten an unfiltered view of teen social media accounts. But while that access may be what some parents dream of, what Pamela Wisniewski has found is many of their nightmares.
We've collected Instagram data from over 195 youth, and we had them share their private message conversations with us and flag any kind of risky conversations they had. And so it's commonplace for them to get messages asking to be somebody's sugar baby or a sexual solicitation.
So how do kids react to these messages?
For the most part, these youth know how to stave off kind of these unwanted solicitations, especially when they're from strangers. What we're seeing more of is difficulty in understanding how to navigate these conversations when it's coming from somebody they know or a friend.
Solicitations like these, cyberbullying, and/or threats are a regular part of a kid's online experience, according to Wisniewski.
We've realized that youth are almost desensitized to some of this violent language that's out there. So they'll bully each other to say, like, go kill yourself, or I'm going to kill myself, in conversations that are in group conversations that are joking.
But what about the other times when kids feel like something is wrong?
In those cases, that it's really important for parents to listen because they've already reached that threshold.
Wisniewski says with kids now back at school, social media will act as an amplifier.
Things that are happening online can exacerbate problems at school, and things that are at school can come home with them.
She says parents aren't able to monitor everything a child is doing online, but that doesn't mean they're fighting a losing battle.
The solution is teaching good social media practices to our youth.
Because she said social media can also be a force for good if used correctly. In Nashville, Adam Mintzer, News 2.
Now to our This Week cover story. An internal audit recently showed the city was at a high risk for encampments of the homeless. News 2's My Owen spoke with the Office of Homeless Services. They say they're making immediate changes.
For months now, we've seen the problem. But last week, we read about it. This internal audit of the Metro Nashville Homeless Impact Division, focusing on where the city was back in 2020 and 2021.
I didn't quite know much about the services that were provided prior to me becoming the director, but now as a director, I welcome that audit. I think that it really helped me to understand where we were as a department and where we needed to go.
The 21-page audit revealed at the time there were 16 encampment locations, labeling the city as high risk because there was no encampment plan.
Probably the most shocking thing was that our community did not have an encampment strategy, and that was something we got to work on immediately.
In response to the audit, the now Office of Homeless Services stated the audit showed that for some time, the measures enacted under the previous MHID leadership were not effective in reducing homelessness. Thus, quick and immediate changes were made.
So during the summer, during the spring, encampments are typically large. They may pop up in various locations. During the winter months, then encampments are small. So I think that's kind of what we're seeing now.
Meaning they're helping to connect them with housing.
So when I think maybe one of the misconceptions might have been that we're closing an encampment without a plan and without a priority process.
Just a few blocks from the Nissan Stadium, the TA truck stop. This is the latest encampment to go through what's being called a housing surge. Roughly 32 residents here receiving notifications pointing to extreme safety threats to the unhoused residents in the area. My Owens, News 2.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment.